All right, we are rolling now. Counting us down. 3, 2.
You're listening to Missing Out with Lex Michael and Tari J. Let's start the show.
Hey guys, welcome back to Missing Out. I'm Tari J.
I'm Lex Michael.
And if this is your first time listening, what we do here is we introduce each other to different media, whether it be movies, music, books, television, spoken word, experiences, things that have built us up as people. We hope that in sharing them, they build you. We are the retrospective that is introspective.
That was delicious.
Hell yeah. Eat it up.
That was like Nutella because it's soft and it's like smooth.
Right.
Right.
A little nutty.
Little and creamy and whatnot. You can spread it over bread easily.
Ooh, yeah.
Yeah.
And today, we are joined by a good friend, Drake Cummings. Yo, welcome.
Hello, everyone. Thank you very much for having me on. This is my first time on the Missing Out podcast, but I'm familiar with it. You guys were just guests on our podcast over at the People's Collective. And, I am one of the main people over there who have not appeared on this podcast yet, and I wanted to rectify that, so here I am.
We're glad to have you. Yep. You brought in the 2008 movie Blindspotting.
2018.
What did I say?
2008.
I do that every time, and I hate myself for it. Whatever.
Time is it's all an abstract concept.
Sorry, guys. I was referring to when it was written. No, when it was. No.
10 years, 10 months. What's the difference?
Yeah, totally. Blindspotting, which was created by David Diggs and Raphael Casal, which was actually written in like 2009. That's when production started, and then they didn't get it off the ground until 2000. Didn't start until they could start filming in 2017.
Whoa, I did not know that. I didn't know they were trying to make this movie for 10 years.
Yeah, well, the background is one of the producers approached Raphael and really liked his poetry and was trying to find a way to integrate that style or that enhanced language, as they call it, into a more cinematic platform. And so they approached him, and he was like, oh, also, I have this really good friend. His name is David Diggs, and this was before David Diggs was David Diggs.
Right.
So they got together, and like David will tell this story about how they were just kind of pretending that they knew what they were doing, and they'd be going to these meetings and being like, yeah, we have a hotel room, but they're sleeping in their cars, and they're like, yeah. I mean, we totally know how to write stuff, and the producers were being very generous about it and being like, maybe you should read these things, maybe you should read some scripts that we like, and maybe it'll help you. So that was really cool. But yeah, this was directed by Carlos Lopez Estrada. This was his first feature film. He had worked with David and Raphael on music videos.
That is wild. I did not know any of that background information. I love that I learned something. Do all the guests learn something about the thing they bring?
Occasionally, they learn something about themselves.
That's true. I mean, that's what we hope, Yeah. That's the goal.
It's pretty wild that this was like they've been doing this since before any of them really had careers, and like this is like the first movie they've made, and it's incredible. Like, this blows my mind how good it is, considering this was his first go at it.
Yeah, it's crazy. But like, so what exactly made you decide to bring it onto this show? Like, what about it speaks to you?
So to get that story, we have to go back a little ways, back to a whole 10 months ago when MoviePass was the saving grace of cinema.
I saw quite a few movies I might not have made it to the theater to see because of MoviePass.
Right, yeah. MoviePass was great, like, not that long ago. It used to be unlimited movies, any showtime, basically any theater, $10 a month. So I saw a lot of movies in 2018. that I probably would not have seen otherwise. And this is one of them because there's so many indie movies that come out that like I see a trailer and I'm like, oh, that looks cool. But like if you stack up all the indie movies that looks cool that comes out, like it's like $50 a month.
Right.
So with Movie Pass, I got to see a lot more of those indie movies more frequently because, you know, this is 5 in the afternoon free. I can go see it. And Blindspotting was just one of those things I like knew nothing about going into. I was just like, I think I heard like something about some film festival that it did well at, and I was like, cool, I'll see it. I like that actor. I don't know that actor from Hamilton, which is where I think most people know him from. I know him from the HBO mockumentary Tour de Pharmacy.
Oh,
he plays in that. Yeah, he plays a comedy role in that. So it's the only other thing I'd seen to be digs in, and I was like, yeah, I liked him in that. This seems cool. It's an indie movie. Let me check it out. And then I walked out of that movie being like, I just saw the picture of the year. Like I saw the best movie that came out this year for sure, and like one of my favorite movies of all time. Like just like that, I was like, that's such a cool surprise that, you know, I just walked in this movie and knew nothing about it and came out like with a new favorite movie.
Yeah.
It blows my mind that this did not appear in the Academy Awards whatsoever. To me, it is still absolutely the best movie of last year. It's criminal. Like I don't know how.
You know, Academy Awards has their quotas. They're like, damn, Oscars getting too black. We can't let these Oakland motherfuckers in here. We already got one movie featuring Oakland. We can't get two.
Yeah, they have to choose their Oakland movies.
All right, so if you had to pitch this to someone, hadn't heard a single thing about it, didn't listen to the last 10 minutes where we were like, oh, it's so great. Mm-hmm. How would you pitch it?
Right. So I think why this movie resonates so much with me is I love, like, every story's basically been done already, right? Like, it's so hard to have a wholly original concept. That's why, like, in pitch meetings in this town, like, you have to pitch something by comparing it to, like, 2 other things. Mm-hmm. Like, and that's just kind of expected that, like, stories are basically going to follow the same structures. And so where stories really shine nowadays and where like you can really create something interesting is like going into characters, like how, because people are all individuals, like they're all different and everyone's background is different and stuff. And so it's about telling a story about people that you just like, you believe and empathize with those characters so drastically. And this movie does it so well. And then even though there's maybe similar movies that, you know, you could compare this to, I think what this movie does with plot structure is incredibly interesting because it's so rare nowadays I'll watch a movie that I don't know what's going to happen. Like it's just some idea. Like I had no idea how this movie was going to end. There's multiple inflection points in this movie where I'm just like, it could go either way. I'm really not sure. And that's why I'm nervous. And that's something else this movie did that like most other movies can't do is made me nervous. Mm-hmm.
It's got one of the most stressful scenes that I think I've ever seen in a movie theater.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. I would say it's got a couple of those, and like they're all so stressful because like the movie really makes you believe that anything can happen, and it would make so much sense with the story. And so because of that unorthodox plot structure, and because of the way it makes you empathize with its characters, it just really resonates. I don't have a similar experience to any of the characters in this movie. My upbringing was very different. I grew up on like the other side of the country, and so
where are you from?
So I was born in Florida, but I spent most of my formative years in South Carolina.
Where in Florida?
I was born in Orlando, Florida.
Okay.
And then I went through middle school and high school in South Carolina, Spartanburg, South Carolina.
All right.
Then I went back to Orlando for college. But yeah, my upbringing is in experiences in like the towns I'm from are nothing like anything these characters are from. And like, that's what's so interesting about it to me is that like, it gives me a window into a life that I don't know and like makes me care as deeply about it as a personal issue. And that's incredible. And I think that's what, that's the power of movies, films, and media and stuff is to help us as people emphasize and understand walks of life and problems that we don't go through every day. And this is such a good job at doing that. I think a lot of movies of its same ilk come off to the vast majority of people as preachy or like that they're trying to get a message, over your head, even if they have to beat you with it. And this movie definitely has a strong message, but I never feel like it's lecturing me.
Right.
Which is an incredibly hard wire to balance on. You'd think it'd be easier, but I think it's actually, nuance is so difficult. So...
And the way this movie balances tones and shifts from one tone, like 1 second this movie is funny and it's got you almost doubled over. the next second it takes a hard left and some real intense shit is going down, and you genuinely have invested in these characters and you're feeling it along with them, and it doesn't feel cheap. It doesn't feel like any of those hard turns are there for shock value, and it's incredible how they weave that thread, because that's insanely hard to balance extreme tones that way. Yeah, Drake, I want to like second every single thing you're saying, and then for me, like on top of it, I caught this thing in a theater too, and I had heard a little bit about it before I saw it, so I knew more or less, very generally, the ideas, the big themes that it was going to be dealing with. Walked out of that movie and I saw it with my girlfriend, and we went to get drinks afterwards. And we sat there talking about it for like half an hour really intensely before I think she stopped and pointed out that we were talking about these characters as if they were real people that we knew. We had invested in them so fully in only about an hour and a half. That's staggeringly impressive to me.
Because it's a relatively short movie, like in the grand scheme of movies. Like an hour and a half is not a lot of time to really...
Right, and it packs so much into that hour and a half. Yeah, there's a lot of plotty stuff, but you also get a number of insanely well-developed characters. You get all of these tones. You get... this movie's packed full of really big, timely ideas. And it never feels like anything is getting shortchanged. It never feels like Drake, like you said, like it never feels like you're being hit over the head with any of it. It's really impressive.
Yeah.
One thing I just want to double back on what you're saying about the comedy, because I didn't think to bring that up, but that's so right. This movie is funny and dramatic at the same time, and most movies that try and do that suffer from a literary term called bathos. Are you guys familiar with what bathos is?
Lay it out.
It is I didn't know there was a word for this. This has bothered me for years until I found out there's an actual term for this. It is when a dramatic or serious scene is undercut by comedy. Okay. So whereas, if it's written correctly, comedy should complement the polar opposite themes when those come around. But if you stack them too close together, then they just diminish each other.
Right.
So, like if they were in like the serious scene of the movie and then someone just came out with a joke, it's like that is inappropriate in this context, and you just diminish all the tension because you slipped a joke in there when it didn't need to be there. I don't want to name names, but there's like a lot of movies recently, especially like action movies and stuff, that really rely heavily on bathos, and I think it's because they're afraid to believe in the emotions that the dramatic scenes are supposed to be eliciting, and this movie believes in itself. There is no wasted scene. Every scene in this movie is deliberate, and every line in this movie like points back to something else. Like they wasted nothing.
I think there really is something to what you just said about certain writers writing a certain way because, like you say, you describe it as it's lack of commitment to the emotion of the scene. I almost feel like it's a response to the way a lot of audiences respond to earnestness. Tari and I, we've talked about this, not super recently, but we've talked frequently about like how, what a lot of people will refer to as cheesiness, right? They're mistaking earnestness for that because people, I think we're transitioning out of this phase, but from the 90s till about a second ago, everything was cynicism and shy away from the emotions because the emotions are, it's just too much. It's ridiculous, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. I think hopefully societally we're starting to transition away from that. Yeah. But I do think there are a lot of audiences for whom earnestness makes them a little bit uncomfortable. Maybe makes them feel a little too vulnerable sitting there watching this commitment to emotion. Sure. So this movie is so fucking earnest in a way that I cannot imagine it alienating anybody because every moment is so connected to that reality. Every moment is so connected to character. And these guys are so easy to empathize with, as are the people in their spheres. Mm-hmm. So the fact that it can be that crazy earnest and then commit fully to the emotion and pivot, do heel turn pivots between one tone and the other without the comedy undercutting the drama or vice versa. I'm impressed by this. Was that not clear?
No, wasn't picking that up.
Like it's just, it's an insanely hard thing to do that effectively at all, let alone that effectively.
Yeah, And kind of piggybacking off of everything you guys are saying, because I wholeheartedly agree, but to stack on top of it, you were talking about how this is a very character-oriented story. And I think that, like, in addition to the characters that you're following, you get a chance to have, for the first time that I've seen, Oakland as a character. Like, everyone talks about how in things that are set in New York, like New York is the extra cast member, ha ha ha. New York is one of the characters you're following. But you never get that for Oakland. Typically, Oakland is painted as a dangerous, gangster, harsh place, where you never get all the shades of positivity and negativity, whereas this one is embracing every aspect and also doubling down on how much it's changing, in that, like, yes, that perception of how dangerous it was has kind of ruled over Oakland for many, many years, but also its transition into a more gentrified state isn't necessarily a good thing. So you get to kind of see it wade through those gray areas, which I really liked.
Yes, exactly. I noticed that I rewatched the movie this morning in preparation for this podcast, and I noticed that because I had actually forgotten how much Oakland really was a character in this until I rewatched and I saw the opening is all about Oakland. Mm-hmm. The opening just established it's like split frame. On one side, it's the old Oakland. On the other side, it's the new Oakland. And it's kind of juxtaposing and comparing. One side there's somebody riding his bike, like doing a wheelie, and on the other side there's like some weird hipster on his like tall bike that like makes no sense. It's like the same but different. Yeah.
Which is crazy. I feel like now we should kind of drop down the spoiler wall, because I really want to get into the nitty gritty of this movie.
Okay.
So if you've listened this far and you're like, damn, that sounds like a great movie, I hope I don't get spoiled. Well, this is me ramping up to dropping down that spoiler wall and giving you a chance to really like take a pause and think about whether you want to be spoiled. And I'm also going to tell you that it's available online. You can find it digitally or on Blu-ray or DVD. I watched it on Amazon streaming, and I rented it. So it's available. Highly suggest it. Watch it because it's worth your time.
Yeah, Drake, you referred to it as your favorite movie of all time. At the very least, I believe it was far and away one of the best movies released last year.
Yes. Best movie last year. It's among my favorites. I don't know that I would crown it as king, but it's in the running.
For me,
for sure.
I've literally now only seen it the 2 times, but I feel like this is a movie that I could watch over and over and over again, and maybe it could get there. But it's too new. The relationship's too new. I've been hurt before.
Yeah,
it's true.
You really gotta let it process. There's some things I thought were my favorite that kind of fade over time. There's other things that have grown over time. So, but it's in that conversation for me at least.
Yeah, it's true. I was like, man, American Pie should have won movie of the year, and everyone was like, American Pie, son? And I was like, yeah, that's it. No, it's not it, guys. Never won any awards. Oh man,
I've never seen American Pie.
Sean William Scott was this close to a Best Supporting Actor nomination.
It's
but
true.
Politics.
I know. I mean, that guy had to have sex with a pie.
No, that was the other guy.
I know, but like the other, I don't care about Sean Patrick. I only care about Jason Biggs.
The Pie almost got Best Supporting Actor too.
It won something at the MTV Movie Awards, but those don't count.
Yeah. But it was this close to getting that nomination, and if it got nominated, that Pie would have won. And it had even less screen time than Judi Dench in Shakespeare in Love, and I think she won that Academy Award. So I think she felt a little threatened, and when people got word that Dame Judi doesn't want this Pie step in 2, it killed the whole thing. She didn't even have to do anything. They knew what she wanted, though. Like, that's the genius of Judi Dench. She could let you know what she wants without ever asking for anything. Mm-hmm. That's why she wins those awards.
It's true.
Also,
it's all a politic game.
She's also good at acting.
She's quite a dame.
No.
Yeah.
No,
you guys get it.
You killed it.
You get it.
All right. Why'd you shoot it? It was so pure.
All right. So the spoiler wall is down, and we are now going to talk specifics.
We should, I feel, roughly outline what the story of this movie is for context.
Well, quick question before we do that. Did you guys cry in this movie?
I didn't cry. I don't know. I don't think that there were any moments that I would have like drawn a sad point from. There were a lot of like very tense moments that I could relate to. And I definitely understood Colin, who is Daveed Diggs, his frustration and his lack of outlet and things of that sort. Like, I definitely resonated with those things, but I don't think there was a point where I was like, yo, this make me sad. Though I guess today, since I watched it yesterday, there are moments where like the sadness I felt when the topics of this movie were very prominent, which is now, but also like a few years ago, it was very highlighted where every week another black dude was getting shot. Those feelings started to bubble up again in a not great way. And so like that, I think, is the lasting effect of it. But in the moment, I think I was just so engaged with the characters.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't think tears came out in my case either, but there were a number of points where I felt completely gut punched. Like,
So-
I was feeling it intensely, but I don't think there was water.
Okay, I cried both times I watched this movie.
Okay.
The first time in the theater, and then the second time just like this morning at home.
I respect it.
Yeah, it's weird. You're right, because it's not necessarily any sad parts.
Yeah.
It's just like, I don't know, the things that usually get me the most emotional are the things that like the emotion that you're supposed to feel is unclear, and I think they're just confusion tears.
Yeah.
Oh, that pie scene is gonna fuck you up.
I think that the most like emotional in any individual moment in the movie that I got was when Sean, who is the son of the second protagonist, played by Raphael, named Miles, when his son did the "don't shoot," like that moment to me like hit me real hard, because like I have nieces, nephews, siblings, things of that sort who like I fear for their lives. Like my nephew, who I'm closest with, he's just turned 18. He's like 6'2", so like, and he's, you know, got dreads and shit. So at any moment I could get a phone call that's like, yo, you know, he had some Skittles in his hand and police didn't like it, and so he's dead now. So like that moment when like you teaching this kid as young as, I imagine that kid is about like 3, 4, maybe 5,
maybe 5.
Is having to learn to like throw their hands up and say "don't shoot" is a very like powerful image. So I would say that that's the most that's the closest I got to being like, oh no, my heart hurts.
Yeah, especially because they have to teach him so young that he doesn't even understand it. He still thinks it's a game.
Yeah.
Right.
Like, so he's learned this very important lesson, and to him, he just can't even comprehend the real meaning of this lesson yet. But so I cut you off though. What is this movie about? Like, we should explain that. Apologize for derailing this.
No, the Lex was talking. I don't do recaps, guys. I only talk about specifics. So I could recap it, but I won't. Okay. Why don't one of you guys do it?
Okay.
I'm gonna take a nap.
All right. Oh, he's leaving.
Oh,
He just went and sat down. All right.
So what's this movie about?
So all right. Let's see. Following we're gonna tag team this.
Okay.
Following an altercation at his place of employment, Colin is arrested and has to serve minimal time, but big probation period. And he's living at a halfway house. He's got a curfew. He's got to do the chores. He's got to hold down employment. The normal tenets of probation.
And the movie takes place in the last 3 days of his probation. So only 3 more days he has to stay out of trouble. And he is tested in those 3 days, his ability to stay out of trouble given people he hangs out with and the parts of town he live in, and just, you know, his old life. And, you know, in one way it's a story about breaking cycles and, you know, learning and owning up for mistakes. And in another way it's also, you know, a commentary on gentrification. It's a commentary on police violence against minorities, and like a loss of identity in a rapidly changing world.
Yeah,
It's well put.
It takes on so many complex topics in such a small amount of time, and does them all so much justice, and make them all make sense together. Like, there's a reason all these topics are being discussed in the same movie. So
yeah, because they all exist. Like even in just that small microcosm of Oakland, like those different layers are all confined to that one. Like I don't even remember the meter. No, I talk about miles. The mile radius of Oakland, but that in and of itself is transposed and can apply to almost anywhere. Like this could be set in Los Angeles. This could be set in Detroit, or I don't know. Where's another place?
Guam.
Houston. Yep, it could be set in Guam. I want to see the Guam blind spotting.
Guam spotting.
But
Blind
another
guaming?
what?
Blind guaming?
Uh-huh.
Guam spotting?
Guam spotting. I like that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That rolls off the tongue nicely.
It does. Yeah. Ooh, yum, yum, yum.
Blind guaming sounds sticky.
All right. I'm going to wrap this up for you guys. So we, in that 3 days, one of the big inciting incidents of the movie is when Colin, who is played by Daveed Diggs, is witness to a man being shot by a police officer.
In the back.
Mm-hmm. And as he's running away, he yells, "Don't shoot!" And he is shot 4 times in the back while running away. And this leaves a lasting impact on Daveed. He has kind of like a post-traumatic stress like reaction to it. He's dreaming about it. He thinks about it a lot, and he's trying to process it, and all while staying out of trouble in these last 4 days or 3 days. But he's also surrounded by people who don't necessarily understand the depth of the situation he's in. Being on probation, Daveed Diggs does a really good job of describing it in that it's a trap. It's a thing that's designed to give you a sense of freedom, but ultimately it's designed to put you back in prison. Mm-hmm. So they give you all these rules that are almost near impossible, and you have to be able to like stay out of trouble. But just talking to a police officer could get you put back in prison.
Yeah, and that's another thing. He is running late to his curfew, and so this murder happens after he's supposed to already be back at the halfway house. So he can't say anything because now it's like a convicted felon is saying a police officer shot somebody, and you're not even supposed to be out right now.
Yeah,
like,
right. So, well, what were you doing there?
Right. Yeah. So this is a lose-lose situation. That's kind of a point of this movie too. Is like, there's certain people that society has just listed as, the certain type of person, and like they act in this manner and they speak in this manner, and, they're to be believed in this manner and stuff, and, really putting people in boxes. It's not always what you look like on the outside. Like him and his friend are a perfect example of, two people who but by looking at them, you would probably confuse their personalities. So.
Yes.
Which is kind of what the party scene is about.
Right. That's something I really want to talk about is the relationship between Miles, who is played by Raphael, who is Daveed Diggs' best friend. Daveed Diggs plays Colin, and their relationship is essentially the same as it was like in their existence, in that they met in high school, and these two guys have known each other since they were young. And so like I really like that juxtaposition of Miles being this what people would perceive someone from Oakland to be, and Colin being someone who's trying to transcend that idea. And it comes to a head at a certain point when we get what I like to call the inward scene. Mm-hmm.
Apt.
Yeah.
I mean, because it's so like I think. Oh, go ahead.
I was going to say, because Miles is a psychopath, right? Like, Miles is this white guy living in Oakland who's always lived in Oakland, and now it's being gentrified, and you see a lot of other white people starting to move into Oakland and kind of, culture vulture a little bit, adapt some of like the Oaklandness, but still like bring their hipster ways in. And so from the outside looking in, Miles, who has been shaped by the culture of Oakland that he grew up in, is now becoming mistaken for one of these new fake Oaklanders who've moved in and trying to, rep Oakland, but don't really understand the culture behind it. And so he is in a constant fight to like preserve his identity and the identity he felt like he has had growing up in this small area. And so he is fighting to remain the same whereas Daveed Diggs is fighting to change his life.
Right.
And that conflict comes to a head because both of them also have each other's best interest in mind, but their ideas of what the best interest is for the other is the opposite.
Right.
And so it's one of those stories where it's like, oh, like Ted, like, oh, his friend keeps dragging him down. What's going to happen? But it's done in a way that it's like you're not like you feel for both of them because you understand where both of them are coming from. They're both kind of right in their own way.
Yeah.
And you want both of them to just like, you want them both to get what they want. Both of them getting what they want is the opposite, but they still have each other's best interest in mind. It's weird because like no one's really I mean, I don't know. Miles is kind of at fault for a lot of stuff, but like you always
Miles is the one starting fights and
Right,
buying guns and whatnot.
Yeah, exactly. But like it's hard to be mad at him because it's like I know why you're doing this.
He's shockingly easy to empathize with given his behavior. There's this amazing moment when they're at the house party that's at the place of this very stereotypical hipster guy. The moment where he sees Miles and points out that they have the same tattoo. And you watch Miles' entire worldview just completely shatter in that moment. It's amazing. And by that time, exactly what it means, both implicitly and explicitly, and how I feel like that's really the moment that breaks that dude in the movie.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Especially because right after that, the guy says that he just moved from Portland like a couple months ago.
I found my home.
Yeah. It's rough. Like, especially because like in Oakland and in the Bay, like there is a sense of pride. I guess I've made it this far into the podcast before saying that like I'm from Oakland.
Oh, I didn't know that. That's super interesting.
When we were gonna tie that in somehow.
Yeah. So I forgot. I forgot that I hadn't mentioned it. So the things that they are talking about and the things that this movies are inspired by, like I resonate with them in that like this movie was written right after the Oscar Grant shooting. Oscar Grant was a guy I went to high school with. So it's like that, like there's a small connection there, but like I say all that to say that like there is a sense of pride in growing up in Oakland and in the Bay Area. Like it's not just a place to a lot of those people who were raised there. It is their being. It is a part of their essence. And so to have this place essentially being, for lack of a better word, colonized, it really makes you question like where you belong, and it really makes you feel like an outsider in your own house. It'd be like if one of you guys came in and were like, yo, I live here, I'm changing how everything looks, and I'm like, no, this is my house, guys. And you're like, no, this is for your good. I'm doing this for you. I'm going to make everything here better. And it's like, but I like all the stuff that I have. Mm-hmm. I grew up in this house. But that doesn't concern you, and you don't understand why I'm upset by it.
Right. And it does such a good job of there's this constant imagery of the oak tree, which is like a big symbol of Oakland. And there's this really great parallel between them cutting the oak trees down and seeing the rings of how old it was and stuff and how long it's been there, and then seeing it just being turned into coffee tables.
Yeah.
And it really like it's a good connection to the people and like the police cutting down the people who have been there and the new people moving in or cutting down the people who have been there for so long, like their oak trees.
Yeah.
And it's pretty powerful when you make that connection. Something else that I really like about the movie, because this movie does have to do with constant change, is Colin's home life is a direct comparison to what is going on in his city. He comes out of his 2 months in prison, and his room's not his room anymore. His mom is settled into a new life with a stepfather who is not from Oakland, I'd imagine. Other people using your old things and stuff in different ways, and it's constant change, and like he's, fighting to remain who he is while also growing too. Like he can't stay at his own home anymore, but like he kind of shouldn't be staying at his own home anymore. Like he should be moving on too. So it's almost like this change is unwanted, but it is also what's best for him, right? Like, it sucks that, like, your room isn't your room anymore, but at some point you have to move on for a better life. So that's also the thing too, because I think gentrification in general is a very tricky topic, because while it's bad in a lot of ways and kind of like disrupts the culture and prices people out of areas and stuff, it's also effective in reducing crime and other things like that generally make an area undesirable to live in. It's trying to improve the quality of life, but at the same time it forces people out who aren't ready to change or don't have the means to change. So it's a complicated issue. Ideally, the environment would be better and the culture would be preserved, but that's never exactly what happened. So it's like a constant fight of like, well, we need new buildings and nicer shops, but we don't want to lose who we are as people.
Right. I mean, the shitty part about gentrification is that it's not like these improvements are being made for the sake of the people who are already living there.
Right. It's to encourage new people to move in.
Right. Yeah. It's almost like a new form of redlining or segregation, in that they are essentially, and by they, there is no all-encompassing they. It's
the people who live there.
Right. Well, the people coming in, more specifically, are using this shift, like you were mentioning, that crime goes down, and that's because essentially, like, they are causing people to become homeless and then sweeping those people off of the streets. And so, like, these improvements happen, but it's
at a cost to people.
Yes. And it's a new way for, I don't want this to be like, this is a new way for fucking white people to blur.
But it kind of is.
I mean, it's more of a class thing than a race thing. It's more a way for affluent people to try to, one, steal this land, try to steal this land, because land is one of the most precious commodities that you can have that allows you to continue to build wealth. I was listening to a recent discussion about reparations and like why those are important, and it's because like black people after slavery were prevented from owning lands, and then they were prevented from getting loans, which, like, if you have this land only accrues in value over time. And so, like, if you're essentially stealing all this land that is cheap because you've forced everyone who is of lower income to live there, and then essentially pricing them out, you are you're essentially creating a further burden on these people, to the point where, like, at a certain point they'll have nowhere to go.
Right. And it's a ripple effect of generations of not owning land has led to this, has led to this, has led to this.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's there's a lot to dig into, and that's just one of the things that this is about.
Yeah.
Now, what was the most tense scene for you guys? Was it when I think his name was Sean, the kid? Was it when the kid found the gun?
Yeah, that was it for me.
Oh, okay, all right. Yeah,
I remember seeing this for the first time in the theater, and because you really don't, because it heel turns so quickly and efficiently from tone to tone, you really have no fucking clue what could happen moment to moment. So once they walk into that room and the kid has found the gun and is playing with it, there's a minute there where it's like, oh my god, they're gonna make a point here by blowing the little kid away. Oh fuck. Get that gun away. Oh fuck. Yeah. And it like racked me with emotion, dude. Like, and watching it again this time, I was struck by how brief that scene is. In my memory, the first time seeing it, it felt like it went on, and I mean this in a good way. It felt like it stretched like crazy because I was so dang tensed out.
Yeah, I get that. I think I had a lot of different tense moments, and a lot of them cycling around that gun. Like, that was one of them. The other one when Colin still had the gun and the police were coming up,
and he's walking home.
Yes. Yeah. Or also at the
party.
The party when Miles starts shooting the gun in the air. Like, all of those things, like, any one of them could have sent him back to jail, and it just heightens this thing because you don't want this character to go back to jail. Like, he's trying his hardest to make a better life for himself, and it's like everything is conspiring against him to fail at that.
Sidebar, talking about that scene at the party when Miles pulls the gun and starts firing it into the air. Something that always stresses me out in movies. You just fired the gun, you fired a bullet into the sky. So eventually, that thing is going to come back down at a high velocity. Stop standing right there. Just take 2 steps back, for Christ's sake.
Yeah, they hit somewhere. Yeah, it's always terrifying when the characters do that, because who knows, like, some in the back could just, like, start bleeding. It's like, oh, that's where it landed. Like, now you're a murderer, Miles. But who's gonna go down for it? Is it gonna be you, or the easy target?
Right, and that's something that they hit pretty explicitly in this movie too. Like, Miles is the one that keeps getting Colin into trouble, but if the police show up, because of who they are assumed to be by outsiders or by people that don't actually know who they are, one of them's more likely to get shot indiscriminately than the other.
Right.
So it's not just the threat of going back to jail, it is potentially an imminent mortal threat for Colin to be in these situations when they escalate to that degree.
Right, for this gun to even be around, like, it's an unregistered firearm. That's, he could get shot just for having that, like, regardless of whether or not it discharged, which it did. So, so crazy. Yeah, like, and then the scene when the N-word scene when they're, having their argument is, like, also just super tense. Like, I don't know where it's going. Like, are the cops going to... At any point, like, the cops could show up and just see this white guy and this black guy arguing, and then one of them's got blood on his mouth. Like, wonder who did that. Like, there's so many times where I'm so afraid that he's going to go back to jail or he's going to be dead. And, like, this movie could have ended that way, and, like, it would have made sense. That's why, like, you never really feel safe, because you don't know, like, how this movie's going to end. It actually ended way happier than I thought it was going to. So...
Yeah, especially because I'm not sure if you guys know about the, like, original ending of Get Out, but it felt like it was all leading there. So in the original ending of Get Out, like, Chris, who's played by Daniel Kaluuya, and spoilers for Get Out, I guess. Spoiler for an alternate ending of Get Out, I guess. If you haven't seen it, go. What are you doing? Like, just turn your car to the nearest theater.
It's not in theaters anymore, bro.
To the nearest theater. Demand they give you a private showing.
They'll be like, get security.
But in the alternate ending, Chris gets arrested, and so, like, the last shot is of his friend visiting him in jail because he's essentially convicted for the crime of killing that family. Because police didn't know that family was trying to replace his brain. They only saw,
and that sounds crazy.
Yes, and so I didn't know if it was heading that way. I didn't know if, like, we were going to spend all this time hanging out with these characters, getting to know and love them, and then at the very end, we're hanging out with Colin in jail. And finally, Val, his on and off again girlfriend, visits him and was like, "Told you to stop hanging out with Miles." And it's like, great, that's real life.
Yeah, yo, fuck Val though. I hated Val.
So I understand the sentiment of being like, fuck Val, but that was until I heard the actress talk about her feelings about the character and, like, what the unspoken motivation was. And it's that character is the daughter of immigrants. And so one thing that immigrants or, like, second generation children feel is this responsibility to make the best of the sacrifices that their parents have made. And so she's trying to apply that same logic to Colin, who is still kind of stuck in his ways because he is an Oakland native. And so he's trying to stick to his roots, whereas she's trying to make a better life in order to put down roots.
Right.
So, like, I totally get it. Because in the movie, she just feels like kind of a nagging ex who won't, like, get off of Colin's case even though he's trying. But, like, when you have that extra little bit of connotation, and it's all there, like, she's actively, like, going to school and trying to better herself, and, like, you get that she still has feelings for her and she cares about him. Like, she's the one who got him the job at the moving place, so, like, you get why she's trying to push him, but you also get why like he's resisting.
Right. Yeah, and I do get that. Man, how powerful was scene 2 when the guy was describing the fight that landed him in jail in the first place? And
Right, and a perfect example of how insanely well this movie can juxtapose and balance tones, right? Because the story itself is harrowing. It's deeply upsetting to watch what happened that landed Colin in jail, and equally devastating to see the look on Colin's face as he has to stand there and listen to this guy drag him through what turned out to be probably the worst experience of his entire life.
Right.
But at the same time, the way this dude is telling the story is very, very pointedly comical.
right, because he tells it like you would tell your friend about this crazy thing you just saw. And like it's yeah, it's accurate and also disturbing at the same time. It's
And at a certain point, it really feels like he's not even telling the story to his friend anymore. It really feels like he's just telling the story to Colin. You're like, you remember this fucked up bullshit you did? I bet you do, but I'm going to tell you anyway.
yeah, I think at one point he was like, "Yeah, I was there."
Yeah. My favorite part of that bit was the different names that he kept calling the hipster who had the scorpion bowl.
Topher Grace.
Yeah, Topher Grace.
Jason Biggs.
Jason Biggs. It was great. It reminded me of what's the actor's name from Ant-Man who tells the fun, whimsical stories?
Oh,
Michael Pena?
Michael Pena. It reminds me of when Michael Pena tells a story in Ant-Man.
A little bit because you do the dubbing over, too.
Right.
The person telling the story over the characters moving their mouths.
Yeah.
But so, again, like the way they balance tone in that sequence is insanely impressive because while you're bouncing back and forth from the way the story's being told to Colin's reaction to the actual, like you see the fight, it's super dark, told in a comedic way, but while you're getting these overdubs from this guy who's telling the story in a really excited, comical way, you then see the reality of like how badly they did beat. And this guy was an asshole. Like somebody probably should have like smacked him, open palm.
Right, of course.
But they really, they lay into this guy, and given the subject matter that this movie deals with, I thought it was a very interesting choice to have the guy say, "I can't breathe," while they're beating on him.
yeah. While he's on fire. And Miles just like keeps kicking him even after like he's on fire and you know the other one stopped. Like he keeps going in, and this foreshadows him losing it on the guy at the party in the next one because Miles just cannot stand the idea of being disrespected or being confused, you know, for a hipster. And like, so he hates them so much that he just almost blacks out when he like goes in on this. And you can see in his face in that second fight where like it's like I don't even know if anyone's home right now. You're just operating on pure rage autopilot.
Yeah. Well, it's that hood mentality of like showing how like manly and you ain't supposed to be messed with and all that stuff. Like, though I will say that Miles, right before he started kicking that dude, said the greatest line I've ever heard. He was like, "You better get out of here before some real town shit happen to you." And I was like, yeah, I know that. I know that feeling. That's good. Yeah, I'm going to use that.
Some real town shit indeed.
Bruh, I'm telling you, yeah. That's how it goes. Anyways, but yeah, I forgot what we were even talking about. Well, I'm still stuck on that line.
Yeah. We got to talk about the final scene, like the climax of this movie, when he comes face to face with the man who he saw murder someone in front of his eyes.
And you get this incredibly searing monologue that's all delivered as freestyle verse.
Yes.
Which is again, like, it's so we were doing things a little bit more lightly in the moments just before that. And they realize that they're moving stuff out of the home of that police officer, and at a certain point it's like Colin just breaks, like he does. He reaches his breaking point and he pulls a gun on this cop, and you see the two of them really looking at each other again, and the cop recognizes him because the night that the shooting happened, Colin's sitting right there in the van. They have a moment where they lock eyes.
Right.
And you see this look on the officer's face that almost looks like an immediate post-traumatic stress response. And you see this guy who is actively dealing with the weight of his actions. And so much so that he has to move his family out of that neighborhood because of the fairly legitimate concern that somebody is going to be upset about what he did.
Right.
We got to talk about the monologue itself, but there's this incredible fucking moment when Colin finishes, because the officer's silent the entire time. When Colin finishes, he basically drops the mic, just shoves the gun back at Miles, walks out, and finally the officer, not even looking at Miles, just says almost a little quiet, like, I didn't mean to. And Miles asks him, "Are you sure?" And he doesn't answer because he can't.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Fuck.
Whoa. And it's the first time that those two have been on opposite ends of this scenario. You know, the cop is in the position of the minorities, in which he has, you know, terrorized, you know, you might say, up to this point, and now, you know, Colin is in this position where he has the power over this other person who usually dictates his life to, you know, whether he goes to prison or dies or any of that. And you're right, you said the whole thing was delivered in freestyle rap, which should be absurd. It should be ridiculous and like corny and not make sense. But the way this movie has been structured up till now, it gets you used to the idea of them expressing their emotions in rap form, because him and Miles do it throughout the movie a little bit, like when they're like walking on the street, or they're talking about getting money, or they're talking about their job or their dreams. Like, they do it in this freestyle form. And so you kind of get the feeling that maybe these guys are more comfortable expressing their feelings in song form, because growing up in like such a hard environment, if you're not, you know, you're expected to be tough, and then songs are maybe like, and rapping is like the one outlet you can have where you can be honest with yourself.
Right.
So
where you can embrace that earnestness that makes a lot of people so uncomfortable.
Yeah.
And Miles said earlier when he was selling the boat, he was like, you know, people will remember more if you say it in a flashy way. Mm-hmm. And so it's just laying the groundwork for that.
And I actually think that's an apt way to describe pretty much all of the dialogue in this movie. This script is incredible, both in terms of its structure, in terms of all the ideas that it packs in, but also in terms of like every line of dialogue in this thing feels very intentional, very thought through, and almost lyrical in themselves. We talked about, it was last week. I have no concept of time.
It's fine.
Last week
time
we
is a
talked
construct.
There you go. Last week we talked about His Girl Friday, I believe, which is one of my favorite talkie movies ever. I believe I compared it to Sorkin. You compared it to something. I was here.
Gilmore
I swear.
Girls.
That's the one.
Yeah.
But this very quickly is becoming one of my preferred, let's call them talkie films, in terms of the way the dialogue is constructed and delivered. And of course, it makes a lot of sense that you've got these two guys who are clearly great actors. Who's going to understand those words better than the guys that wrote it, better than the guys that lived it to a large extent?
Right.
So yeah, just the setup and the execution of the way each scene is structured dialogue-wise, and the interplay between the two characters, and how in their conversations, their inane conversations about whatever piddling thing they happen to be talking about at work to kill time, you get so much of a sense of history and familiarity with the two of them. And it's like, that's why the way the movie ultimately ends, it ends with things both changing and remaining the same, right? Like ordinarily when he picks up Miles, Colin might have come inside, said hey to everybody, maybe have breakfast, but he says, no, I'm cool out here. Like, a conscious decision has been made to break at least an element of that cycle. But then you see they get into the van. Their dynamic has shifted, right? So Miles is now driving. Colin that day is the one who's waving guns around and shit. But their interplay is still the same. It's that sense of friendship, that sense of familiarity, that sense of, I think they would both balk at the term being used, but yes, a sense of love. That's still there. There's a moment earlier in the movie, and I think the first time I saw the movie, it took me a couple of minutes to be like, what was this scene about? But it's the scene with Wayne Knight where they're moving stuff out of his art gallery. Yeah. And that's where they really, I think, highlight for the first time the idea of the oak trees, because part of his recent series of pieces was he overlays oak trees that used to be there over the areas in Oakland where they used to be. Right. Which, again, we talked about that metaphor a little bit earlier. But there's a moment where he has them stand face to face, and he tells them to really look at each other, and they immediately it makes them uncomfortable. Like, and it plays in the moment like, you know, it's a masculine front, like, oh, I don't want to look too deeply into the eyes of another man. Come on. But it genuinely, immediately, before they even start to unpack any of what's happening with their dynamic, looking at each other and seeing not just seeing the other, but also seeing elements of yourself reflected in a way that might make you question things in a way that you're not totally ready for. I thought that moment was really interesting, and it didn't sink in fully into my mind until I watched it this time.
Right, yeah. I think same, because that moment, in a way, is what this whole movie is about.
Yep.
It's about looking at, you know, people who aren't necessarily the same as you and, like, feeling what they're feeling and empathizing with them.
Right,
in
and
a deeper way.
that's what the title of the movie refers to, right? It's like Val is studying, and she's trying to come up with slang terms, like as a mnemonic device to help her remember certain things.
Yeah.
And that's where the term blind spotting comes from, the idea being, right, when you look at somebody, you see what you see first instinctually, but that may not be, in fact, is almost certainly not all there is to them, but you are seeing the thing that your instinct tells you to see first. So that other thing that is there that you're not seeing, that's the blind spot. And every single character in this movie, you could say that about. Just like, weird, right? Everyone in life, too. Weird. Super weird. What?
Are you sure?
Super weird.
I don't think so.
Bizarre. No, that's pretty much I'm all surface. I'm all fucking.
Ooh, yeah,
There's no.
yeah.
I am exactly what.
Lex Michael is like the Earth, flat.
Oh, wow.
No, guys, I don't believe that. Please don't text me. Please don't send me.
I know what
mail.
my instinct is telling me to see first now.
I agree wholeheartedly. A little background on the lyricism in the movie. When they were first approached, I was looking up the name. The producer, Jessica Calder, she wanted to find a way to have. They say in musicals, when a person has reached the point of emotion that words won't suffice, they break out into song.
Yes.
And she wanted to find a way to capture that, but with hip hop or poetry or lyricism. And so that's how this whole project got started. And they took a poem by Raphael and wanted to find a way to integrate that into the movie. And in doing so, they decided to kind of intersperse what they call enhanced language throughout, and so you get that dream sequence, which I thought was probably one of my favorite parts of the movie, where he's in front of a jury of his peers, which are just other black people who you assume have already died, and he's spitting up all these bullets, and Raphael is doing his like rap verse and things of that sort, and you get those music video direction sensibilities from like Carlos Lopez Estrada, who started in that arena. But you get those seeded throughout so that it makes sense when it ultimately is expressed at that end climactic moment. In the same way that, like, if you compare it to Hamilton, you get two duels before the final duel, just to get you adjusted to the idea that, like, people settle things by shooting at each other.
Right.
So, yeah. Guys, what are your final thoughts before we head out?
This movie was important for me to bring to this podcast because from what I understand about the spirit of this podcast, it's about bringing something to people that they probably would have missed otherwise. I think a lot of people probably missed Blindspotting when it came out. It was an indie movie on a smaller budget, probably got a more limited release than some other movies, got no love at the Academy Awards, despite the fact that it absolutely should have, probably due to the fact that they didn't run a big Oscar campaign because they probably didn't have the money to like run an Oscar campaign like a lot of the big movies did.
Right.
That's often why you see a lot of smaller movies get overlooked.
Right. And so I I've been trying to get everyone, ever since seeing this movie, I've been trying to get everyone I know to watch it, and unsuccessfully. I was just up with my friends, the rest of the People's Collective this weekend, working on some projects that we're working on, and the whole weekend I was trying to get us to take an hour and a half break at any point during the weekend to watch Blindspotting, and they're like, Drake, I'm sure it's good, we'll watch it, but we really got to work. I'm like, I know you're not wrong, but I really want you to see this. And I think, a lot of people nowadays are hyperbolic about a lot of things, like, oh, you really got to see this show, you really got to see this movie. But like, you really got to see this one. Like,
yeah. Next time, if you try to get someone to see it, be like, yo, if you was a real hood N-word, you'd watch this movie. And then I think you'd really get them to do it.
Yeah. That or do something else to me. I don't know.
Threaten them with some real town shit.
Yeah, I'll threaten them with some real town shit. I might avoid the other language.
Right. Maybe. I mean, or they'll be like, yo, this dude risked me stabbing him. It must be a good movie.
So yeah, it's an hour and a half, guys. Like, it's worth it. Like, I'm not asking you to watch the uncut versions of Lord of the Rings here. Like, this is a small time investment. So if you're out there and you have access to see this movie, please check it out. And support those guys. It's their first, the first picture that they made together. Like, let's get another movie out of these guys. Tweet at them, tell them you like it.
Yeah.
I tweeted at them after I saw it, and I was like, yo, I think you guys locked down the Oscar. And David Diggs liked my tweet.
Oh, nice.
I think his mother liked one of my tweets about the movie.
Aw.
Because I tweeted out, and this is Drake. I too will not be using epithets when recommending this film to others. But
Are you sure?
Reasonably. When I first got out of the movie, and I don't tweet too many things that often, but I felt compelled because I found the thing so powerful. I tweeted out, just saw Blindspotting. Holy cow! Everyone should see Blindspotting. And I guess Mama Diggs liked it. But I still feel that way. I think this is a great movie. I think the super hacky way to put it would be it's got something for everybody. So we're not going to do that. But there are so many layers to this thing, and there are so many fascinating variables, and there is such excellent dialogue, and the scenarios go from hilarious to heart-wrenching super fast. And again, like you keep hearing me say, it's insanely fucking hard to do what they did with this movie, and especially Drake, like you said earlier, without making it feel preachy, without making it feel like it's hitting you over the head with its themes bluntly. I think this movie's excellent. Definitely one of the best movies of last year, and a movie that I plan to watch again a number of times in the future, and also to recommend to as many people as possible.
Cool.
Yeah. Yo, guys, it's some real town shit. I this was my first time seeing it, and it's really sticking with me. I think I mentioned earlier that it like started to bubble up some feelings that I had not forgotten, but kind of pushed down just to exist on a daily basis. So I highly recommend it. It does a really great job of balancing its humor and its seriousness, which makes it a lot more of a grounded film in that it feels real. Like Lex was saying, like these characters feel like real people, and you're just spending a day in their lives, or specifically 3 days in their lives. It has a very, like, I would describe a Friday feel to it, if you've heard our Friday episode, in that like it feels very much like you spend time getting to know the individuals of this community, and all of their quirks and all of their really intimacies and their insecurities and all their flaws, and in the same way that you get to know those aspects of the city itself. And I think it's a great exploration of those things while also being entertainment. So that's it. Guys, thank you for talking to us about Blindspotting.
Yes.
Drake, thanks for coming.
Thank you guys so much. I've been wanting to talk to anyone else about this movie for like 10 months, and you guys gave me the opportunity to do that. So this has been so much fun to talk about this movie.
Guys, watch this movie and thank Drake for doing so. Where can they thank you?
They can thank me on Instagram or Twitter. My Instagram is @Drake Cummings, and my Twitter is @Drake_Cummings. I am also heavily involved with a group called The People's Collective, which you can find on Instagram at the.peoples.collective. And we are a group of multi-talented individuals who have come together to produce a number of things, including an original series, original mockumentary series about starting out in entertainment in LA. It's funny. It's all based on real events that has actually happened to us and living in Los Angeles and Hollywood specifically. It's going to be dropping on our YouTube page of the People's Collective on YouTube starting next Wednesday, which is April the 3rd. Thank you.
Yeah.
So you can check that on our YouTube page.
Awesome. And you guys also released a few like character shorts just to get people acquainted to who's going to be in it.
Right.
So they can check those out on your Instagram as well.
On my Instagram or the People's Collective Instagram. They're up on both of those.
Awesome.
We got other things on the channel. We got movie reviews. We're going to have other one-off skit content and game information. I'm going to do this game editorial series where I talk about like game design specifics and stuff.
Yeah.
Because my main background is actually in game design.
Okay.
And then there's going to be a couple other things on there. Check it out. See if there's anything you like. We also have a podcast that we run every other week on Wednesdays. It's the People's Collective Podcast on Apple Music's Podbean, and now Spotify.
Nice. Lex and I were on the show last week. It was really fun. We were talking about some game stuff. We were talking about... What else did we talk about? James Gunn. We also did a really fun game where we tried to guess whether a headline for a comic thing was true or false, and so that was dope. So if you have a chance, really check out the People's Collective podcast. Super fun. Yep. Great guys.
Yeah, the episode that you guys were on, it was the best episode we've done so far. So I think you guys really helped elevate us.
That's really sweet. Lex, where can people find you?
I am on Twitter and Instagram at the Lex Michael.
Awesome. And you can find me at Tari J, TARIJAY. But more importantly, you can find us at Missing Outcast. That's MISSINGOUTCAST on Instagram and Twitter. And you know where to find us in terms of being a podcast because you're already listening to us. But what you can do if you like listening to this, you can leave us a rating. It helps bump us up in the charts, helps other people find us, because as you know, the most important and most potent way of advertising is word of mouth. So tell your friends, leave a rating, leave a review, let people know that you love what we're doing. And once again, thank you for coming, Drake. This was really fun and very, I guess, informative and a little bit sad. That's the movie. But yeah, we will see you next week. Bye.
Did you know a turkey puppet once ran for the presidency of Ireland? Did you know that meat once rained from the skies of Kentucky? Did you know that there was an emperor of the United States for a while? Then listen to the Wiki Ship Down podcast.
We live in an age when the sum total of humanity's knowledge can be found in your pocket on a smartphone at any given time. But when that knowledge is peer editable, like it is on Wikipedia, what does that say about mankind? So follow us down the digital rabbit hole as we drink, joke, and curse our way through the random button on Wikipedia and see where our journey through humanity's knowledge takes us.
While you're at it, follow us on all social media at Wiki Ship Down. I'm Ruth Ann.
I'm Ryan, and be sure to find us every Wednesday on iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, or wherever you listen to podcasts.